After all this time. Always.
Severus Snape, a character that seems to yo-yo throughout the Harry Potter series, starting off as the original red herring, and then turning out to being a hero, and then kind of an anti-hero, and then a villain again, until we finally have that moment in Deathly Hallows where we find out that Severus Snape has been working for the good guys all along, and somewhat redeems himself. But does he really redeem himself? In this episode of Constant Review, we're going to be looking at the character Severus Snape and deciding whether or not he truly is a hero.
Snape, Snape, Severus Snape, 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 Severus Snape,
Dumbledore!
Snape, Severus Snape,
Dumbledore!
Snape.
So, as hard as it may be to do, we're going to have to try really hard to focus only on the character of Severus Snape, and not the greatness that is the actor Alan Rickman that brought so much to the role. Honestly, I loved Alan Rickman's performance as Snape, and he said so many memorable lines in the Harry Potter series.
People will think you're up to something. That is the second time you've spoken out of turn, Miss Granger. Are you incapable of restraining yourself, or do you take pride in being an insufferable know-it-all? Turn to page 394.
And I am a very firm believer, too, that it's not really Christmas until Hans Gruber falls off of Nakatomi Plaza. But we have to kind of set Alan Rickman's portrayal of Snape aside and really just look at the character of Severus Snape to determine whether he was a hero or a villain. We're first introduced to Snape in Sorcerer's Stone when he plays the original red herring to the series. Throughout the book, we're led to believe that Severus Snape is attempting to kill the protagonist, Harry Potter, in his first year of attending Hogwarts. It's not until we find out that what Snape was really trying to do was saving Harry's life, which Dumbledore tells us is because when Severus had been going to school, James Potter had saved his life, and he was paying it back to James's memory by protecting his son. We later find out in Deathly Hallows that this is a huge lie. In fact, sorry to break it to you, but Dumbledore's kind of lies a lot in the Harry Potter series. I mean, a lot. But this is the first lie we hear about Severus Snape, and we finally find out in Deathly Hallows that the real reason why Snape is so determined to protect Harry is because he owes it to Lily's memory to protect her son. As we find out in the great twist at the end of Deathly Hallows, Severus Snape had been childhood friends with Lily Potter, and had been in love with her his entire life. And thereby, from the moment that Voldemort had decided to go after the Potters and kill them, Severus Snape would permanently be a member of Dumbledore's team. Which, on the face of it, doesn't sound that great. In fact, this seems like a perfect example of a character who is being good for a very, very selfish reason. It's made abundantly clear that Snape doesn't care if James and Harry die, nor does he seem to care whether Frank, Alice, and Neville Longbottom die. He only cares about protecting Lily's life. And so his motivations are extremely selfish. Even 15 years later, when asked the question, does he care about Harry now? His answer is a resounding no.
Lily. After all this time. Always.
To mention the fact that Severus Snape was a complete butt to two students, two children who went to Hogwarts, Harry Potter and Neville Longbottom. Now, we hear throughout the series that Severus Snape has shown distinct favoritism towards the Slytherins every year, but those two characters in particular are the ones that he is absolutely going out of his way to be vicious to. But alas, when it comes to Harry Potter, there is at least some reprieve and some defense for why Severus is always a butt to him. And that is explained in Deathly Hallows. When Snape looks at Harry, all he can see is the face of his childhood bully, a bully who tormented him throughout his entire time at school, routinely doing things as bad as taking off of his pants and pulling down his underwear in front of all his classmates. That's pretty traumatic stuff, and this stuff used to happen to him all the time while at school. Add to that the fact that that same bully ended up stealing the girl that he was in love with. It's a recipe for him to naturally despise the living embodiment of that person when he has to see him every day. But does he have any excuse for being so mean to Neville for the first few years of Hogwarts? Snape seems to attack and berate Neville just as much as Harry, and it doesn't seem like there's any reason for this at first. That is, until we get to Half-Blood Prince, where we find out that Severus Snape is one of the only people in the world to know the contents of the prophecy that caused Voldemort to go after the Potters. I don't think the reason why Snape torments Neville is because Snape doesn't like Neville at all. I think the real reason why Snape has always been so cruel to Neville is because he's the living embodiment of a mistake he made. Neville's existence, alive and unscarred, is a permanent reminder that when Voldemort had to choose between the Longbottoms and the Potters, he chose the Potters, based off of information that Snape himself had given to him. Thereby, every time Snape looks at Neville, he just sees the fact that he was personally responsible for Lily's death, and Neville is a living reminder that there was in fact a 50% chance that Voldemort would have never went after the Potters, and Lily could have still been alive, but isn't. So, how does that affect where Snape falls as a hero or villain? Basically, Snape made a good decision to end up fighting against evil and Death Eaters for extremely selfish motivations. And though his reasons for disliking Harry and Neville may be completely understandable when we actually dig into them, he still at the end of the day is tormenting two teenage boys for reasons that are completely outside of their control. After all, it's not Harry's fault that he looks like his dad, and it's not Neville's fault that Voldemort chose to interpret the prophecy the way he did. So him becoming this boy's literal worst fear is a huge testament against this character. And if Snape's story had ended with just these three character details, he would, in my opinion, land firmly in the villain category.
Now, the average point total for a resident here is roughly 1.2 million. Right now, based on everything that you did on Earth, you have negative 4,008.
That's not great.
However, lucky for Snape, this isn't where his story ends. After Goblet of Fire, Lord Voldemort returns to the Earth, and Snape has to once again resume his duties as a spy operating as a double agent within Voldemort's own ranks. This role truly is a difficult one for him and forced him to do many things that he would not want to do, finally culminating at the end of Half-Blood Prince with him killing possibly the only person that he really considers a friend, and the only person who actually knows about his feelings for Lily. In fact, he goes on to, even after Dumbledore has died, to protect the students of Hogwarts for absolutely no personal benefit, and goes out of his way to protect other people that he has since come to consider friends. The whole time knowing that every single person would forever believe that he was the villain, as Snape had absolutely no reason to believe that anyone would actually find out his true motivations. The only person he ever actually told or ever found out that he was actually working for the good guys the whole time was Harry, a person who he genuinely believed would not live past that night. And so this character who had become a good guy for all the wrong reasons finally ends up doing things that are completely selfless, giving himself up and finally dying for the cause. And that's why in my book, I firmly believe that Snape died a hero, and that's what we should consider him. Though, admittedly, I do think it's going a bit too far for Harry to have named a kid after him. I mean, maybe just get him a statue, maybe a ward of Hogwarts named after him, or get him a posthumously awarded Order of Merlin First Class. He did seem really excited about that back in Prisoner of Azkaban. Personally, I believe that if his goal was to name his kids after people who died or nearly died for him, he had a lot of better options he could have gone with than Snape. And a part of me believes that the only reason why J.K. Rowling ended up giving Albus Severus Potter the name she did was so that his initials would spell out ASP, which is a type of snake because he's a Slytherin. But anyways, guys, that's just my opinion on the matter. Let me know what you guys think, and if you guys enjoyed this and want to see more Harry Potter theories and content, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. It helps a lot, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye!